Reports have come out that rival executives calling the Boston Celtics about the availability of Malcolm Brogdon have been completely shut down. We'll be talking about that, plus what that means for the Boston Celtics moving forward, and former Celtics star guard Kemba Walker signs in the Euroleague with Monaco. So we'll be discussing all that on this edition of Celtics Digest. First thing, of course, is Malcolm Brogdon. We got a bit of a trade update. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen that Malcolm Brogdon has been in pretty much every trade rumor that the Celtics have had this offseason, going so far as almost being in a completed trade involving Kristaps Porzingis, but just for the Clippers to pull out last minute and, having some injury issues with Malcolm Brogdon himself. Of course, that trade ended up being completed, but the Celtics had to ship out Marcus Smart, a fan favorite, and one of my favorite players in the Boston Celtics, maybe even my favorite, got shipped out. But Malcolm Brogdon, it's not ended there with the trade rumors for him. He's been involved in every trade rumor for Damian Lillard that we have seen as well. So for the Celtics to come out and say, no, we're not moving him, that's pretty big. As you can see by this tweet, Brogdon might be staying put. Rival executives tell Steve Hoop that the Celtics have rebuffed trade calls on Malcolm Brogdon. One executive said, quote, "They said he's a valued member of their team, and that's where it ended. We didn't get anywhere." And I find that kind of interesting, actually, and let me explain to you why. Because on the surface, this makes a ton of sense. Why would they trade Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon in the same offseason? Then your point guard depth is just Derrick White and Payton Pritchard. But I think there's more to it than that. When we saw the mysterious injury issues with Malcolm Brogdon around the Kristaps Porzingis trade, it raised a few alarm bells, right? Brian Windhorst, for example, went on one of the shows, Get Up or The Jump or something, and said, at the time, back in June, he said, no, Malcolm Brogdon's injury, from what I hear, is very, very serious, and, the Celtics might not have him for a good chunk of next year. And just recently on 98.5, they said that Malcolm Brogdon's injury might take 6 or 8 more months to heal, and that they said, quote, he may not pass a physical for another team. So it kind of makes you wonder whether this report is more about Boston saying, no, we lost Marcus Smart, we want Malcolm Brogdon to stay here, we're not going to give him to you. Which honestly makes a ton of sense, and it's probably just that, but with the extra injury news kind of surrounding him, it makes it a little bit more of a mysterious and questionable situation, but maybe I'm overreacting. Let me know what you think down below, but regardless, we now know Malcolm Brogdon is staying put almost for sure, and even if he is hurt to start the season, he should be around for the playoffs, right? And that's what you want if you're Boston. Even without him, you'll have a solid regular season team. You'll finish pretty high up in the East. They'll probably get the 1 seed, or at least they'll be fighting with a team like Milwaukee for it. But Malcolm Brogdon is going to be that key piece come playoff time. 6th man of the year, right? You want that kind of guy come playoff time. But he's going to need to adjust his game a little bit, right? So let's just show some Malcolm Brogdon stats here. This past season, it was 15 points a game, 4 rebounds, and just under 4 assists per game. Now, you can see on his career, he's actually a better playmaker than that, averaging 4.6 on his career. Actually, last season, he had much better shooting splits than typical because coming off the bench, he played against maybe some worse opponents, and he also was just taking better shots. He had other guys on his team who could take the shots, as opposed to somewhere like Indiana, where he didn't really have that luxury. But the interesting thing with Brogdon is his stats without Marcus Smart. His points go up a little bit, his rebounds go up a little bit, but his assists jump by 0.5 per game, all the way up to 4.2 assists per game in 15 games without Smart. And that's where the difference is going to be with Malcolm Brogdon, if you ask me. Because Marcus Smart, while Marcus Smart wasn't known as the best playmaker, by the time his tenure finished in Boston, it still hurts to say his tenure's finished, but regardless, by the time his tenure finished in Boston, he was actually a very solid playmaker. He was a traditional point guard for so many years. Myself and other Boston Celtics fans were saying, he's really a 2-guard. He's really a 2-guard, right? He might bring the ball up, but he's a 2-guard. But as the seasons have gone on, he became kind of just that point guard. And someone like Brogdon is really going to have to fill in that playmaking role, because if you guys didn't know, when he was with Indiana, when they made the playoffs just a couple of years ago, and Malcolm Brogdon averaged 10 assists a game in the playoffs for the Pacers, and he showed this amazing playmaking capability right from his rookie season, where he won Rookie of the Year in Milwaukee. So he's able to do that, and especially when your other point guards are Derrick White and Payton Pritchard, 2 guys who are really, they're good in their own right, especially Derrick White being one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and Pritchard being a solid 3rd string. We'll actually talk about him in a second. That playmaking is really going to need to come from Brogdon as opposed to some of these other guys. I mean, Tatum's going to do his thing, Brown's going to do his thing, but from the point guard spot, that's really going to fall on Malcolm. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he fills those shoes of Marcus Smart going forward, and I think it's a smart decision for the Celtics to hold on to him. But now, what does that mean if he's injured, like we said? Right, if he's going to miss half the year, the Celtics still need to fill in that role, and that's where Payton Pritchard comes in. Payton Pritchard is very, very interesting. He averaged only 5.6 a game last year, and actually every year of his career, his points per game, his minutes per game, they've gone down every single year, but regardless, he's a 40% three-point shooter on his career, and if we saw his final game that he played last year, he went out and put up a 30-point triple-double, right? So he has that skill in him, and he's kind of a fan favorite as well, but he's really going to need to step up. Him and a free agent signing that we haven't really spoken a lot about, Dalano Banton, are going to have to fill in those minutes for Malcolm Brogdon. So very interesting that Brogdon is definitely not on the move, whether it's injury-related or just team-related. We're not really sure. We can assume it's mostly team-related, but regardless, it leaves the Celtics in a bit of limbo coming into next season. And the only other thing I wanted to talk about today is Kemba Walker. Yeah, I mean, I know you guys probably don't care too much about Kemba Walker at this point, but it's very interesting that he's signing in Monaco. I mean, just a few years ago, he was on this Boston Celtics team that was playing like deep into the playoffs, and he's the starting point guard. And I know he really didn't have very good series for Boston in the playoffs. He really was disappointing relative to what we wanted him to do when he first came to Boston. But to see him fall out of the league this quickly and run to the Euroleague is kind of shocking. I mean, he went to New York. They thought, yeah, he's going to be that guy. Of course, New York going and getting their past their prime point guards like they did with Derrick Rose as well. But for him to be gone is kind of shocking. And we got a little picture here to show it. No, not Payton Pritchard. He's still here. We got this. Kemba Walker et Monégasque. I speak French, so I can translate this for you. They basically said Monaco is happy to announce the signing of the American point guard, four-time All-Star, all-time leading scorer for the Charlotte Hornets, 750 NBA games. He's an exceptional scorer. He's going to bring his mastery of the game over to the Principality, which is what they call Monaco, because that's really what it is. It's its own country, but it's also a Principality. Very, very interesting. And Kemba had something very interesting to say about going to Monaco, too. I mean, you guys might find this interesting. He said, quote, "I've only heard good things about the Euroleague, and I have many friends who play in this competition. One of my closest friends, Shabazz Napier, gave me a lot of advice in making this decision," which is really, really interesting. Shabazz Napier, of course, also went to the University of Connecticut. He was a star in college, similar to Kemba himself, right? People were drawing those comparisons from the first day that Shabazz Napier stepped on the court for UConn. And even like someone like LeBron was praising Shabazz Napier constantly, right? Napier gets a ton of hype, and he's very good friends with a lot of current NBA players, so it's not that surprising that he reached out to someone like Kemba. But the big point here is that it's his fall from grace. And I mean, it was so fast. It felt like the second he left Charlotte, he came to Boston, he was fine. He had his moments, he really did. But for just in these last few years, for him to just go from all-star to like starter to bench point guard, not wanting to be a bench point guard, to being at the end of the bench, not being played by the Knicks, to now going over to the Euroleague as a four-time All-Star who's still active and not that old, it's kind of surprising. But I guess when you look at someone that's Kemba's height, right, the point guards that size don't often hold on to the NBA late into their 30s. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. So regardless, I wanted to wish Kemba the best. It's going to be very interesting. I can't wait to see what kind of stats he puts up over there, because the EuroLeague is quite good. I mean, a lot of people underestimate how good the players over there actually are. But regardless, you got to think that Kemba Walker is going to be able to absolutely torch it over there. So if you're a Celtics fan and you're a Kemba Walker fan, go have a look at him over in the EuroLeague. I think it'll be pretty fun. But that'll do it for this edition of Celtics Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're brand new. We're hoping you guys can subscribe, help push us up in the YouTube algorithm, push us along. We're here to bring you all your latest Boston Celtics news. I've been your host, Josh Gosse. We'll catch you in the next one.